Right, welcome to another rubber stamp show and tell. This is National Stampographic, which was one of the early rubber stamp specific publications out there. This one is volume 15, number 2, winter 1997. I don't know, I'm pretty surprised this is volume 15. But this is one of those magazines that were out there. I was aware of two magazines at the time. One of them was National Stampographic, and the other one was Rubber Stamp Madness. Now, Rubber Stamp Madness had a much larger circulation than National Stampographic. I don't really know too much about like the real early history of this magazine, but they were based out of Huntington Beach, as far as I know. From the beginning, I don't know. Actually, it has Las Vegas, Nevada here, so I don't know. I knew they were in Huntington Beach at one point in time because I lived in Huntington Beach, and they had some of my pieces printed in there at one point in time. They did a little article when I first came up with a landscape nature-based system for a Stamp of the Hand company, and I just hand-delivered the materials to them, and they were just, I don't know, maybe a mile or two from me. But I don't know, wherever they were, this was, I think they did become, it was all kind of this glossy style of magazine type of production, kind of smaller run types of things, not like a newsprint, high volume type of thing like Rubber Stamp Madness, but I think at one point they might have went to one or two colors in this one. Okay, so anyways, let's see what was going on in 1997. Now, like I said, this was a smaller circulation, so you don't have quite the scope of what was going on in the stamp industry at the time. But you get kind of the gist of it based on the ads, I would say, and maybe the articles and techniques they were showing. Clear Snap, this is some of the early pigment ink pads here, and I've been talking about Clear Snap with some people recently that are asking me about their stylus tools. I don't think they had their stylus tools at this point in time, but they came out soon after that, and the stylus tools are the tools that I'm using a lot in a lot of the videos. I don't know, maybe that is a stylus tool tip right there. No, actually, it looks like they're holding some sort of little pad like that. They might have made the handle later, but that looks like some little clip-on type of thing for some sort of sponge application. It doesn't seem very practical in that you'd have to grab a tiny little thing like this, you know what I mean? But I don't know, that appears to be what it is, some kind of applicator. But a really great company. ClearSnap just became gigantic in the industry, of course. A lot of you probably know their products. The Vivid line of dye-based ink pads were, I don't know if they were the first raised dye-based ink pads, but they were really early on in that, I don't know, incarnation of ink pads. Raised dye-based ink pads didn't exist for much longer than something like, 1997 and around that time. They just didn't probably have some kind of mechanism to hold the ink, and so a lot of these companies, they just made thicker inks. Now this one is a foam pad right here. A lot of people went to fabric pads, but instead of all that ink just running out of them, okay, they just made the inks really thick so that it would stay within that fabric pad. But they used the foam pad so that, and it was a real dense pad. Not quite like the Marvies, but still pretty dense, and their inks were really fantastic. Stampin' Up! Bought them too, so I don't know if they use the same formula, in terms of the inks or whatnot. Ranger Industries, the Adirondack pads here. I was surprised to see this ad. I just did a real quick flip through of this before I just started shooting this, but I'm surprised that the Adirondack line was out at that time. I didn't think those were out there at the time. I thought it was Sea Brights and Seashells, in terms of some of the earlier pads. It must have been around that time, though. What does this say? Gilding pad. Bronze patina. Color it. I don't know. Do any of you recognize any of these things, Do you have any of these supplies. Maybe you still have them in your, in your supplies. I still have some of my Vivid pads, and you know, I don't know when they discontinued these things, but um, look at that. I mean, that's probably pre 2000 right there. I don't know when these were discontinued, but and I've never re-inked that either. Okay, now I'm not using it all the time because I don't want to use a bunch of supplies that are just that have been discontinued 20 years or something like that. But I don't know, they're still really good, and they had a really great line of blue values and kind of temperatures of blue. I don't know. I wish these ones were still around. I think this is a really high quality pad, and it's just like the name says it. They're very vivid. The D. Grunig videos right here from Posh Impressions. She used to have a store called Posh Presents in, it was either Laguna or Newport Beach, I think it was, but then their rubber stamp line was Posh Impressions. But I was just referring someone to Dee's video, which you can see on YouTube, okay? And if you just type in D. Grunig, or I don't know, maybe Posh Impressions, and it'll come up with her videos. Some other people have posted it, but also Warren posted her husband posted one of these videos. But she was one of the early, pioneers. She was, I don't know about early, she might have been the person, as far as I know, to use kind of the blending dye-based ink type things, using the Marvy 1500 series to, color stamps in multiple colors, and then you stamp them out and you get multiple impressions. Now, I don't know, that's one of those things that just everyone was doing for many years, but I've come to realize that a lot of these techniques and things like that, people have never even heard of. People are used to coloring a stamp, with black or whatever, or just, their pads, stamping it out in a positioner usually, and then coloring it in with alcohol markers and things like that. So a lot of people just, I don't know, some people don't even have any dye-based watercolor pens to color onto their stamps to get those multiple colors just inherently in the types of stamps that they're using. Okay, a lot of stamps these days are they're outlines, okay, instead of, kind of either a combination of line and solid, or just solid. A lot of stamps back when were kind of more of the eraser covering things, where you can get these, inherently colored impressions as opposed to stamping in black and coloring them in. So anyway, her videos are really great for that. You can see kind of the pioneering efforts in terms of the usage of those types of things. And then she always used glossy cardstock as well. So a lot of people just have never stamped on glossy cardstock. Back in the day, everyone had glossy and matte paper. If you didn't have those things, then you were missing, like in the 80s and early 90s, if you didn't have glossy and matte cardstock in your stamping supplies, then you were missing out on like one of the, I don't know, 5 accessories that you can possibly have. There weren't many things made for stamps. So, you were talking pens and paper, and I don't know, that was it, unless you did eraser covering too. All Night Media, I was surprised to see this ad in here. Oh, this is Sandcastle Gifts. I was going to say, they're saying that they have All Night Media. I was going to say, I'm surprised All Night Media was advertising, because they were mostly wholesale. The Ventura Stamp Convention, the Carson Original Rubber Stamp Convention, Carson, California, which is in LA, Los Angeles. That convention was so packed in, and a lot of people from the Santa Barbara area, people would be coming from all over the world to go to that show if you were a stamper. And, if you were in California, people were driving from, 3 hours north, from San Diego, 2 hours south. And I don't know if people were driving in from, like, Arizona and whatnot at that point in time. Like I said, people were coming over from all over the world, because they would use that as their, kind of their wholesale show too, to make connections with the different retailers and whatnot. But Ventura is in between, like, say, Santa Barbara County and LA, and there were people that were driving up from the north to go to that show. So I think a store started this show. I'm not sure, but there was a short show there. I thought it was Violet, though, for her name. But anyways, there was a stamp convention in Ventura that went on for a number of years. Much smaller than the Carson show, though. Rubberama was the other show. As far as I know, might have been the second incarnation of a rubber stamp convention in the world. Okay, Carson was the first, and I think Rubberama, which was in kind of more northern California, Bay Area type of area, the shows went on there in San Jose. So at this point in time, by 1997, they had expanded to several different areas. San Jose, Sacramento, San Rafael, those are kind of in the same general area. But I don't know. Albuquerque, New Mexico. I didn't know that was them. I thought that was Heirloom Conventions. And St. Paul, Minnesota. There were a lot of stores in St. Paul, St. Paul, Minneapolis area and whatnot at one point in time. That might have been the first convention out that way, or the convention that ran on for years or whatnot. I'm not really quite sure. Look at this in terms of, when I'm talking about accessories here. This isn't some kind of rubber stamp specific accessory, but you see some sort of, mechanism probably to, I don't know, stamp something out here, and someone's using a straight edge and a T-square here. So, you made do with those types of things. These are the types of accessories well, not, maybe this isn't really an accessory, but an organizational type of thing with all wood-mounted stamps, that people were using. Clear stamps weren't invented for a long time, at this point in time. So you'd get people making these types of drawers and whatnot. Chances are probably some guy was into woodworking and his wife was a stamper or something like that. So he made her that, and, they went into business or whatnot. So this is from Stamp Keepers, from Rubber Stamporium. How to make an album here. Sandra McCall, I recognize that name. Las Vegas Art Stamps. Probably the second stamp store out in Las Vegas. Or third, I don't know. They carried Stampscapes. LA Stamp Works. I don't know. All kinds of little retail stores in this magazine. As well as, some manufacturers. Like I said, this is a smaller run type of publication here. So, Stamp Away USA. I don't know. I tend to think that convention held in August every year. I don't know when the first one was out there. Maybe 94 or 5 or something like that. It was right when I started Stampscapes, which was in 93, 94. And I don't know, I tend to think that Stamp Away was kind of responsible for the popularity of rubber stamping in that whole, general region, the Midwest. And I don't know, just one of the better events. It was more than a show, in my opinion, because they started everything like on a Thursday, teaching classes over at the store that was there, that ran that show. And then they'd have classes on Friday. They'd have preview nights on Friday at some point in time. And then the show was a one-day show on a Saturday. So just a really big event, like almost like a week. People would be driving 11 hours or whatever. I thought people drove from a long way to go to the Carson show, but it wouldn't be uncommon to see people, saying, "Oh yeah, we just drove 11 hours here," or something like this. This is Auntie Amy Stamps right here. And she had a convention out in Riverside. She might have done more shows than that too. But Riverside was also another area close, in the Southern California area, kind of in response to the popularity of the Carson show. The Carson show, they had to turn down like sometimes 20, 30 vendors just because there wasn't space at the show. So, they created these other alternative shows that, vendors could do that maybe they didn't get into the Carson show. I don't know if they had to turn people down for the Riverside one or not. I didn't do all the shows in that area. Like I didn't do Ventura, and because Carson was already going on 3 times a year. But I did Riverside, maybe once or twice. Wonderful watercolor. 5 methods here. Paintbrush some watercolors from a palette. I don't know, all kinds of different things here. stamping calendars, doing calendars right here. Pretty interesting. Museum of Modern Rubber. Always loved their stamps. And Booth. They had a really great line of stamps. Acid free? The archival quality issue. Okay, so before scrapbooking kind of came onto the scene, and we started talking about the archival types of issues with different media. You didn't hear it talked about too much in rubber stamping. It was only in, when scrapbooking came around, and we're talking about these, um, you know, uh, projects being, heirloom types of things. Did the kind of the acid-free archival types of issues come up? Otherwise, a lot of stamping in the early '90s, especially. It was mail art. You're sending them through the mail, so they're getting handled and everything like that and whatnot. Cards, card making and whatnot. We were not thinking about things being, kind of, non-yellowed 50 years from now or something like that. So pH scale, acidic, neutral, stable. So this is probably kind of, breaking news kind of at the time or something like that. They're talking about the pigment research and whatnot, the color box types of things right here, environmental factors, pigmenting, quality of paper, photography, etc. Kind of interesting seeing that. Stamping out clay jewelry, stamping into clay. I don't know, do any of you do that now? I knew a lot of people that used to do that, jewelry types of things. I used to have this stamp called the tonal applicator, and one of the jewelry makers used to use it. It's just a bunch of dots, but she used to roll her projects. She said that was the stamp that she used the most, but she didn't use it for, stamping on paper. She used it for the texture to put on her clay jewelry. So Sculpey 3 brand clay, all that type of thing. So I don't know. You saw a lot more kind of jewelry projects back in the day. Either using clays, that was the main thing, but there was a lot of shrink art too. And I haven't seen shrink art as much these days. And in fact, I can't remember anyone posting anything to like Facebook or whatever using shrink art in a long time. Maybe, I don't know. You see it once in a while. Stamp Fest Orlando. I did that show probably around this time in '97, and that was always a good show out there in Orlando. I had never been out there, so a lot of vendors used to choose, I don't know, what shows you'd go to. Like if they were in like Las Vegas or something like that. There's not a lot of, a huge stamping population in Las Vegas for rubber stampers, but that was a show that a lot of vendors did just because they wanted a, kind of a business trip to Las Vegas. And then stampers from, around the country would also fly into Las Vegas. There was like really inexpensive flights to Vegas back in the day. So cheap rooms, everything like that. So you'd see a lot more husbands at, not this show, but the Las Vegas show. In Orlando, of course, they have all the the amusement parks and things like that. So that was also a popular show for vendors to want to go to. A lot of vendors did the Anchorage, Alaska show, and there were stampers out there in Alaska, but you weren't going out there to make money. In other words, if you were a vendor, with the cost of things, and everyone is shipping wood-mounted stamps at the time, which is really quite heavy, and you got to get there and back, and people weren't driving to, that show in a van or something like that, like they would at other places. Adventures in Stamping, one of the best shows around in our experience. This one was it's the Cleveland Rubber Stamp Convention. This was in response to the previous Stamp Away USA in Cincinnati here. Okay, they started this Akron show, more northern Ohio type of thing, but we always had a really great time at this show. I didn't do it for years and years because I was doing one show in that area, and as a manufacturer, you don't want to just, if there's stores carrying your stamps, you don't want to do a bunch of, like conventions in their area because you're competing with your own customers or whatnot. You're hurting their sales. So, but this one was always very popular, and I don't know. I think this one's an Independence, but there's two. I guess maybe this one was added in there or something like that in response to the popularity of the Akron show, Ohio show. So a good show and whatnot. Um, Stampberry Farms, Las Vegas. I was surprised to see a Las Vegas manufacturer here. So, different books. I don't know. We were talking about Dee Grunig and her videos here, but here's her publication right here. And she used a lot of solid types of imagery, types of designs. Um, Very bold and solid, so really conducive for the coloring. And you would never use you could stamp these out in black, but I don't know. They're not really made for that. So these kind of more solid images are the ones where you would do the watercolor types of coloring directly to the stamp and then stamping it out. So watch her videos if you have a chance, especially if you haven't done that type of coloring before. And I don't know, as far as I know, she was using mostly glossy cardstocks and papers to do a lot of things like gift wrapping and things like that. The Mail Art Network called PC Mag. What is that? I don't know. PC Mag, kind of the early days of the internet. We started our website back in 1996. I haven't changed it much. That's why the Stampscapes site looks real primitive. I had someone tell me, "Hey, Kevin, you need to change that site," and I know I've been aware of that for like 20 years or something like that, but I still use the just raw HTML. So if you've seen our site, sorry about that. I know it's very primitive and whatnot, but early stuff on the internet and whatnot. The only stamp company that had a stamp website before Stampscapes was Leavenworth Jackson. If you looked up rubber stamping on the internet back in the day, you're searching around using AOL, what was it, web crawler or something like that or whatnot. You'd come up with a couple business rubber stamp things. So we were, or using Yahoo, the search engine, or whatnot, or Ask Jeeves. What was it, Alta Vista, and all those things. Stampscapes would show up on the first page, and now we're probably, I don't know what I would be, 50th page or something like that, probably. But the PC worlds and stuff like that with AOL and Prodigy and all those types of things, those were the first kind of like online stamping groups, and what fun those times were, going into rubber stamp chat rooms and stuff, or I don't know, what do you call them, like news group boards and things like that. I can't remember the terminology of them. Uh, Rubber word play response. My cup of tea. Walks cookin'. I think this might be a stamp in hand stamp right here. I'm not sure. But I don't know. I mean, this is a word response type of thing. There were more elaborate types of stamping being done. So this is one of those things. But this is the type of thing that you would see in a lot of different types of stamping publications at the time. Projects like this, or I don't know, whatnot. Stamp Credits, 100 Proof Press, one of my favorite stamp companies, and Emerald City Ken Brown. I thought Ken Brown was always Rubber Stamps of America, but here's Leavenworth Jackson right here, and here's 100 Proof Press again. So 100 Proof Press is still around. I think it's changed hands maybe one, two, I think twice since this time. I don't know the new owners, but I heard they're very nice, and I still go and check out their site sometimes when someone asks me, hey, where can I get like a certain stamp, like etc. or whatever. National Stampagraphic Happy Birthday Club. So people, I don't know, there's like a bunch of people's names in here with their actual addresses and whatnot. So birthday calls, I don't know. I guess you send out, a birthday card to them or whatnot. And I don't know. When your birthday comes around, if they're in there, maybe they send it to you or whatnot. But I recognize a lot of these names, like here, Stamp Exchange, if you want to do a stamp exchange, chances are back when you would send out originals to people. You don't just like scan something and email it, or post it on a board these days. So it was always hard copy types of things, and I don't think people were going to like a copy center or something like that and getting, you know, uh, copies made or something like that back in the time of this. So I don't know, classifieds right here, stamping pen pals and whatnot. In the Rubber Stamp Madness one, someone used to do a Stampscapes exchange, and she did that for years. Um, I don't know, I haven't looked through something like this, but they would typically, the pen pal type of thing, they would mention things that they were into or the companies they would like, and you could match up with someone that had similar tastes or whatnot, and you can exchange cards and whatnot. That was always kind of fun to see. And then, when things like the AOL groups or the Prodigy groups, they would, because it was, cyberspace or whatnot, a lot of times people would, instead of doing just the pen pal type of things, if there was a convention in a given area, they would say, they would put the word out, okay, the Prodigy group's going to meet at, 11 a.m. In the front of the convention or something like that, so that you get to meet people, rather than just, you know, their online chatter, message board types of, connections. So, anyways, here's more classifieds right here, type of things. Stores in given areas. Okay, they didn't show it by state like they do in like a two or I don't know 4-page spread like in Rubber Stamp Madness, but you know, just different area stamp stores around in a given area. Stamp stores, I don't know. I mean, it was still going on, not just back in the '90s or whatever, but typically if you were going on a trip, and if you were within, vicinity of any stamp stores, you would go to it. And when people were on vacation and whatnot, I used to do the same thing when I was a kid. When I was collecting comics, if we were within I don't know 25 miles of a store, my mom would always take me to these different comic book stores around in given areas. So Uchida of America. Okay, now I don't know. They did have the Marvy Ray's die-based pad at the time, and I still refer people to their website. A lot of people say, "Hey, I can't find the Marvy Matchables." Well, you can go to the Uchida website. Marvy's not the brand, but if you just type in Marvy Matchable, inks or whatever, it probably will come up in the search engine for the Uchida of America website. And there's a lot of different online sellers too, like Judykins and I think Marco's. I'm not sure. Other places sell the blank pad and re-inkers for the Marvy pads, and they're like they're one of those pads that have been around for a very long time that have just been forgotten. Like these Vivid pads are still some of the best inks out there, in my opinion, in terms of quality and color selection. But they just they were an older product, so they just became just not as popular. But it was really based on them just being kind of an older product or something like that, not on the quality of the ink. So, things like colors don't become dated, okay? You still use the same colors or whatnot. But the quality of inks, I don't know, in my opinion, are just some of the best in terms of the Marvy here. So, the brush markers, the 1500 series, like I was talking about, those have the same inks as the Marvy Matchables, and that's why they call them Marvy Matchables, because the pads match the markers like that. So, I don't know. So anyways, fun times looking through this type of thing right here. These types of publications from back when and seeing what was going on. I don't know. I guess, I don't know. The momentum had already started. Sometimes I still see 1997 as being really early on in the stamping industry. But I guess by then, I don't know, you saw a lot more of the pad, the raised dye-based ink pad lines and whatnot. There's a lot more stores out there that could support the creation of these types of products here. So when you get this infrastructure of a lot of stores that can carry, that can make it feasible to put out products like pads or things like that, you saw a lot more of these types of rubber stamp specific accessories being made. So I don't know, a lot of momentum from there, from I don't know the late '90s through I'd say like 2002 or something like that. Maybe the most amount of growth in terms of both kind of the supplies in the industry and whatnot, and stores, conventions, and manufacturers and whatnot. So tons of momentum. And then I don't know, things like Stampin' Up got cooking, and they just became a juggernaut in terms of kind of exposure of and getting more and more people into the hobby. So, anyways, thanks again for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you anything, if you guys recognize anything in these things, or if you have some of these old products and whatnot, discontinued things and whatnot, I don't know. Leave a comment in the comment section and let us know kind of your experience in, I don't know, whatever, rubber stamp history or whatnot. Okay, thanks again.